Welcome, and thank you for tuning in for a Markham LLP webcast. Please listen carefully as we share some housekeeping items for your viewing experience. Please be advised, Markham LLP has prepared these materials as part of an educational program. The information contained herein is of a general nature and is not intended to address the circumstances of any particular individual, entity, or case. While every effort has been made to offer current and accurate information, errors can occur. Furthermore, laws and regulations referred to in this program may change over time and should be interpreted only in light of particular circumstances. The information presented here should not be construed as legal, tax, accounting, valuation, or investment advice. No one should act on such information without appropriate professional advice after a thorough examination of the particular situation. For the best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any programs or browser sessions to conserve bandwidth. This webcast is being streamed through your internet browser. There's no telephone conference dial-in option. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is turned up. Are you viewing this webcast on an iPhone or iPad? We recommend rotating your device to landscape view to better view the controls menu. If you are experiencing any technical issues, click F5 on your keyboard to simply refresh your browser, or exit the event and relaunch the webcast. For additional frequently asked questions and troubleshooting tips, please visit the Help icon located on your console menu below. Take control of your console. All windows are movable and resizable. An on-demand recording of this session will be available in approximately 24 hours using the same registration link you've used to enter today's live session. If you have any questions during the live webcast, please submit them using the Q&A box located on your console. Please note, the system captures all questions that have been submitted. Markham thanks you for tuning in. Please enjoy the webcast.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the annual Markham and Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce Real Estate and Construction Forecast presented by the Regional Water Authority. My name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. And while we're not in person, not just yet, but this is meant to be an interactive day of thinking big and thinking different. We have speakers from around the country, literally, who are going to share their great ideas. Then we'll hear from our own local experts about how they think we can make this region even better. And throughout, we want to hear from you. Use the question and answer feature on the platform. And you can share your ideas today at our chamber-led networking events that will begin at 4:30 p.m., approximately an hour after the program concludes. Now, we have 3 locations: Stony Creek Brewery, 12% Beer Project, and Bear's Smokehouse Barbecue. Many of you have already registered. If you have not registered to attend the in-person portion sponsored by the Chamber, you can show up and register on site. But we are at capacity at Bears. We do have some more flexibility at 12% and Stony Creek over in Branford. So please come out and join us. We're going to be talking about the things we talk about here and continuing that conversation, and we want to hear your ideas as well. Now, please join me in welcoming John McCarthy, co-leader of the real estate group at Markham.
My name is John McCarthy, co-leader of New England's real estate group here at Markham. We're excited to be a co-presenter with the Greater New Haven Chamber again this year for the 2021 Regional Real Estate and Construction Forecast. To share a bit about our New England real estate industry group, it's organized around 3 distinct market segments. We characterize these by investment structure. The first, the Real Estate Investment Trust Group. The second, the Private Equity Group. And rounding things out in the third spot, the Individual Owner, Operator, Developer, and High Net Worth Investors Group. Across all 3 market segments, we represent clients in all areas of real estate, including retail malls and shopping centers, office buildings, industrial and warehousing, residential, and on the hospitality side, hotels, motels, and golf courses. Our service offerings are comprehensive and include acquisition due diligence, acquisition financing, deal and entity structuring, including international tax structuring, audit and assurance services, tax planning and compliance, cost segregation studies, 1031 exchanges, forensic accounting and litigation support, business valuations, and rounding things out with monthly, quarterly, and annual income and asset testing for REITs. So please think of Markham for all of your real estate audit, tax, and advisory needs.
And thank you so much, John. We truly appreciate the partnership that we have with Markham. Our longtime presenting sponsor for today's event is the Regional Water Authority. They provide the water we use every day in our lives, and they are also committed to the economic growth of our region. Let's welcome in Janine Rechtenwald, Senior Vice President of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Garrett, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Janine Rechtenwald, Senior Vice President of Corporate Services for the Regional Water Authority and a board member for the Greater New Haven Chamber. I would love to welcome all of you to the 2021 Regional Real Estate and Construction Forecast. On behalf of the RWA, I would like to extend a special thank you to the Chamber and Markham for inviting us back as founding presenting sponsor for this premier event. This is the RWA's 8th year supporting this forum, and it is a pleasure to be a part of this important conversation that details the outlook for real estate development in this region. While COVID-19 has impacted Connecticut's economic landscape, development, construction, and real estate around the state seem to be among the few things that have not stopped or been negatively impacted. And that's a good thing, as they are critical economic drivers for our region, much like water. Water's life-sustaining properties can determine the vitality of a region, impacting everything from public health and fire protection to quality of life and economic growth, particularly in commercial and industrial real estate. Water as a natural resource is one of our state's greatest strengths, and the New Haven area is one of the most water-rich regions in America. To that end, the RWA has a reserve of several million gallons of water a day, above any state requirements for a surplus. In light of this, our water supply can be leveraged as a competitive advantage to attract industry, development, and jobs to the greater New Haven region. We feel so strongly about this opportunity our water presents, we fund a business development position with the Chamber to assist in job retention, economic growth to position water quality, innovation, and other regional advantages as key differentiators for companies looking to add, expand, or even relocate their operations here. Along with the work we are doing to help shape and promote economic growth, all of you can help with that too. If you haven't already, I'd invite you to join the Chamber's Economic Development Committee and contribute to the conversation to help forge an economic growth strategy for the region. Please contact Ann Benowitz at the Chamber to learn more. In the meantime, I'm excited to get started with today's program and hear the perspective of all of our experts. So with that, let me turn things over to Garrett.
Thank you again, Janine, and thank you to the Regional Water Authority. Later on, we're going to be discussing that program you talked about, the support that the Regional Water Authority has given to economic development and the results we've been able to yield over the last 2 years. Our event and media sponsors for today's event. You'll be hearing from M&T Bank and Capstan Tax in just a few moments. We also want to thank Munger Construction and Newtown Savings Bank, our event sponsors. We truly appreciate the support from Munger and Newtown to be able to put this event forward. Our media sponsors, RJ Media Group and the New Haven Register. The Chamber is also generously supported by our investors. You can see their logos on the slides that are passing through right now. Now, last year was a challenging year for all businesses, including the Chamber, but for us, our investors stayed with us throughout and allowed us to continue to serve the business community. We just want to say thank you again for your support. Well, we are now ready to begin today's program, and to help us get things started and kicked off on the right note, I'm pleased to welcome in Michael Weinstock. He is the market president for M&T Bank. Michael?
Hi, my name is Michael Weinstock, market president for M&T Bank for Connecticut. My colleagues and I are proud to be the speaker sponsor today for the 7th year running. Coming out of COVID, Connecticut looks to be in a strong position. A budget surplus. Who knew that that would even be possible prior to COVID? The largest project in the history of New Haven, the Neural Center in New Haven. 27,000 new entries into the state from the New York metropolitan area. Bridgeport, the highest in residential property values increase in the United States last year, and New Haven in the top 25. As many of you know, M&T Bank has been very active in the New Haven market for some time. Our pending acquisition of Peoples, we're very excited about continuing their great work in the state of Connecticut, as well as ours. Being online has allowed us to do some new and different things. Today we're going to hear from two places that are far apart and very different, but success is common in Austin, Texas, and Manchester, New Hampshire. Laura Huffman is the president and CEO of the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce. Michael Skelton is the president and CEO of the Greater Manchester Chamber. We asked them both three questions. What makes your region successful? What are some of the unique ways they have fostered economic growth in recent years? And how are you thinking big and different in 2021? After we hear from Laura and Mike, we'll listen to LaToya Wilson. She will answer similar questions, but from the perspective of the diverse and growth-focused businesses that she nurtures and supports in her role with the firm. What are those companies looking for in a place, a city, a region? LaToya will help us answer these questions. As we go along, we also want to hear from you. Put your thoughts and questions in the Q&A section of your screen. Now let's start things off with a welcome from Texas and Laura Huffman.
Makes our region successful. I think the thing that makes the Central Texas region so successful is that we have worked very hard and very successfully at diversifying our economy. And so when we design our economic development efforts, we're always thinking about how do we continue to build those sectors that we have that represent the future. So for us, that's technology, but also how do we attract and build brand new sectors in our economy that we know represent the economy of the future for Central Texas. So for us, that has meant life sciences. It has meant military. It has meant automobile and manufacturing. And also it is increasingly leaning into our finance, real estate, and insurance sector. So it's resilience. And we don't just bring any job into Central Texas. We work hard to build out new sectors that represent the future of this region. What are some of the unique ways we have fostered economic growth in recent years? I think one of the most important things that I would point to in how we approach economic development in Central Texas is not only are we trying to bring jobs and grow jobs in this region, we also pay very close attention to those enabling conditions that it takes to be a successful economy in the first place. So you will see that part of our economic development is investing in workforce and education, because the number one thing that we have to do in order to maintain our success is to continually have a pipeline of talent that these companies can tap into as they grow and locate in Austin. Another area that we invest heavily in is in infrastructure. And again, we do that because healthy, solid infrastructure is such a fundamental for your economic development program. So when we look at economic development, we're not just looking at job creation. We're not just looking at new sectors of the economy. We're also looking at making sure that those fundamentals are in place and keeping pace with the work we're doing with the economic development. How are we thinking big and different in 2021? First of all, we're having one of the strongest years we've ever had in economic development in Central Texas. The same was true for 2020. So part of what's happening is we're managing an enormous number of prospects that are looking at Central Texas and making decisions about how to locate here. And that means that the work that we do on infrastructure and the work that we do on talent development is becoming ever more important. So 2021 is a huge year for us. Simply because this region is growing so quickly and there are so many companies that are contemplating coming to our region, and meeting that challenge with talent, with adequate infrastructure. That is the work ahead of us for 2021. So it's going to be a big year.
Well, a big Texas-sized thanks to Laura and her team for participating with this, and some great insights that we heard there, especially to hear from a place like Austin, Texas, where it's always talked about the growth that they're experiencing, and to share some of those experiences with us. Well, now we return closer to home and a city and region that we have some strong similarities with Greater New Haven. And let's hear from Michael Skelton, who is in Manchester, New Hampshire. Mike?
Hi, I'm Mike Skelton. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on today and talk to you a little bit about what's happening up here in southern New Hampshire and with the Greater Manchester Chamber and our region. It's been a challenging year, like I'm sure it has for many of us, but there's a lot of interesting opportunities that have emerged that we're excited about, and will allow us to kind of keep up with the momentum that we had really built prior to the pandemic. So wanted to share a little bit about the Chamber, a little bit about Greater Manchester, and then three kind of interesting trends or initiatives or things that the Chamber and our various regional partners are working on. A little background on the Greater Manchester Chamber. We're the largest chamber of commerce in New Hampshire. We represent more than 800 businesses and about 10 communities in our catchment area. Manchester is the largest city in northern New England, so that's anything north of Boston, about 120,000 residents. And within our 10 community catchment area, we have about 250,000 residents in that space, which is close to a quarter of the state's population. As I'll talk later about our larger regional southern New Hampshire area, really it's a major focal point of the state population-wise and commerce-wise. So there's a lot of opportunity in our region. We have a very strong economic relationship with the greater Boston area, which is influencing a lot of our trends and strategies and things that we're working on. And that's really the first item I wanted to talk about, and perhaps something that is of interest to all of you. And I find in my conversations with business leaders is probably the biggest trend being discussed coming out of the pandemic is the impact and opportunity of remote work and what that means for regional competition and economic development. As I mentioned, our region has a very strong relationship with Greater Boston, and we've been successful at attracting talent and businesses north into a lower cost environment that we can offer with a higher quality of life. So with the trend towards remote work, something that we're seeing our employers adopt here, as well as, of course, across the country and certainly in the greater Boston area, we're really looking at this as an opportunity to reverse and solve some of the workforce and talent trends and issues that we were facing prior to the pandemic, and we're almost right back where we started now. New Hampshire currently has the lowest unemployment rate in the country. Which on one hand is a good thing and means there's plenty of job opportunities, but on the other hand means that so many of our employers are constrained in their growth without being able to find and attract and hire talent. So we're really looking at ways to how can we market and reach out directly to remote workers and those who have new remote flexibility, particularly in the greater Boston area, to see if they're interested in moving their families up here, under the theory that if we can get them living here, we eventually can get them working here. And that's really, I think, a great opportunity for us. And we also can use this as a way to maintain and retain some of our workers who oftentimes start living out and working in New Hampshire, but get tired of that commute and ultimately move closer to wherever they're working. Prior to the pandemic, we had 80,000 workers from the greater Manchester region who were commuting south into the greater Boston region every day. So we're really looking closely at that trend and thinking that with the newfound flexibility, many of those workers are going to be able to put down more solid roots in southern New Hampshire, and we're going to be able to build off of them for our workforce going forward. So within the remote workspace, it's a huge trend from a workforce development standpoint. It's also a potential weakness and risk factor as well, because of course our employees are going to be presented with remote work opportunities of their own. We've seen that with our tech sector actually here in Manchester, where workers who have been working for local tech companies have been getting offers from all over the country in the last few months. And so that's something we have to keep our guard up about as well and be mindful of. But we're pretty confident that New Hampshire and Manchester has always been able to offer a very high quality of life. New Hampshire is consistently rated as one of the most safest states, best states to raise a family, healthiest states. So our challenge previously was aligning job opportunities to that, and we're hopeful with the move towards remote work, we can capitalize on that and bring in more talent. Kind of related to that, as I mentioned, our mill yard is really the engine that has been driving Manchester's success and growth over the past couple years. And up until the pandemic, we had been experiencing great momentum. And fortunately, I don't think we really lost too much steam, and we're ready to take off again. A little bit of background. Manchester had the largest textile manufacturing mill yard and really industrial center in the world in the 19th century. And unlike many other industrial towns of that era, cities and towns of that era, Manchester was able to preserve most of its mill yard, a good chunk of its mill yard, after that industry declined in the Northeast and moved to other parts of the country and ultimately other parts of the world. And over the past century, Manchester has been able to reposition and reinvent that mill yard into a mixed-use innovation district that is now home to tech companies and startups and financial institutions and universities. And it's really an incredible asset for our community, and has been able to also be a new source of housing and been able to further diversify the usage of it. So we're really looking at building and continuing the progress in that area as really our differentiator compared to so many other communities and regions, to have that type of asset in terms of a mixed-use innovation district that has housing and dining, and we have a riverfront area and a ballpark and our civic arena, all within that contiguous space and also connected to our downtown. But one interesting project specific to that I want to mention is we have an emerging biomedicine cluster within our mill yard. It's called ARMI, the Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute. This was an initiative built off of a federal Department of Defense grant, spearheaded by a very well-known inventor and businessman in the country known as Dean Kamen, who has many patents, and inventor of the Segway is one thing he's most known for. Dean spearheaded this initiative, and it's geared towards being able to modernize and build at scale manufacturing capability for skin and tissue and vital organs. It's really cutting edge technology, incredible stuff. Their vision is really the future of healthcare. And eventually, the goal is to be manufacturing skin and tissue in Manchester or the surrounding area, and to have a true cluster of businesses all working and supporting one another. This initiative has already brought in some really interesting startups and satellite offices of companies working in this sector. And the long-term potential is really this initiative could reshape Southern New Hampshire's economy. Aside from the business side of it, from a workforce and placemaking side of it, we've already seen the impact of all the workers that have come into our community as part of this initiative are reshaping what needs to be offered in terms of nightlife and dining and housing opportunities and placemaking in the mill yard. So it's a really exciting time and one of our major initiatives that we're going to be building on. And I think a key to future prosperity and success is our chamber, along with a whole host of other partners, making sure that Army is successful. And then finally, one interesting dynamic that I wanted to speak about that is something we're working on and I think is going to prove to be really beneficial for our region is how the pandemic has really supercharged regional cooperation within our community. For those that may be familiar with New Hampshire, we have a very parochial local control industry where every community is very independent. County government doesn't do much up here. We have chambers that represent lots of, I would call them almost micro regions. And through COVID-19, we had to get creative and really rethink our business models. And so 7 of our chambers from across Southern New Hampshire, all regional chambers, have banded together under a new banner called the New Hampshire Commerce Corridor. And it's basically the Route 393 corridor triangle in Southern New Hampshire, if you're familiar with that area. 7 chambers. And we really realized that by banding together, we now represent 2/3 of the state's population, thousands upon thousands, 5,000 plus businesses just in our membership, but in our catchment area, tens of thousands of businesses, and hundreds of thousands of members of our workforce. So we're really focusing on breaking down regional barriers. We believe that in the post-COVID economy, having a strong regional approach to economic development, to regional marketing is going to be critical to our economic competitiveness. One of our main projects that we're working on right now is supporting our airport, Manchester-Boston Regional Airport, and helping restore air service and rebuild air service at the airport. It's a very competitive phase right now where all of the airlines are looking to reestablish and add flights back to various hubs and regional airports. And we have a very good story to tell with our airport, which is already one of the most successful cargo airports in the country, and that is a separate part of our economy that is really booming. But was a very successful regional passenger airport as well pre-COVID, but like many other regional airports, saw a drastic decline in passenger traffic during the pandemic. And now we're looking to reposition that because we believe we add a much better high quality experience than what travelers can get from Logan due to the traffic congestion and costs. So regional cooperation is really a differentiator and something that I believe regions and to really separate themselves. And when it comes to talent and visitors and business opportunities, they're going to be looking for larger regions that are telling their story well and that are collaborating and finding ways to work together. Other parts of the country are already doing this pretty well. I've always been envious of, out west or other parts of the country where chambers and regional organizations are operating at a massive county level and already coordinating planning and resources. So New Hampshire and the Northeast is a little behind the 8 ball, but one silver lining from the past year is I think it has forced us to rethink and do things differently. So that's something we're excited about. So those are the 3 things I wanted to share today. Thank you for your interest in what's happening in our region and in our state. If you haven't visited, I would, of course, welcome and invite you to come see us up here in the greater Manchester area and New Hampshire generally. We're entering our summer season. Our tourism economy is back and booming. It's going to be a big part of our recovery. And feel free to visit us anytime. Our website is www.manchester-chamber.org. Really appreciate the opportunity and have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
And a great job by Mike. Thank you so much to him. I heard so many similarities between our region and what they're doing up in New Hampshire. So more to talk about that. I want to remind everyone, it's on the left side of your screen, lower left is where the Q&A is. So as you hear things from our speakers, great ideas, feel free to throw them in there. This is all about generating ideas for our region. And we have one more speaker to go, and that is LaToya Wilson, and she is with Morgan Stanley. And she has a little bit different take than our first two. She is working with a diverse group of businesses and talking about what the opportunities are for attracting these types of businesses to a region like New Haven. LaToya?
Hi, my name is LaToya Wilson, and I'm an executive director with Morgan Stanley's Multicultural Client Strategy, where our mission is to identify, develop, and execute commercial opportunities for the firm with multicultural and diverse communities. What are diverse and inclusive businesses looking for in a location? I think diverse and inclusive businesses are looking for a place that they can not only support and grow their businesses, but a place of belonging, where their employees and teams can feel as though they can develop a sense of community. Also, one of the key considerations for businesses overall is making sure that they can attract talent, and most importantly, diverse talent, because data shows that the more diverse an organization, the better they perform. So when thinking about location and attracting great businesses, I think it's important to highlight the opportunities for businesses to attract diverse talent, emphasize any and all opportunities to create a sense of community and belonging, and show representation. With the businesses that we work with, how do I see the economy and workforce changing? With the businesses that we work with, especially during this difficult time in our economy, the workforce has forever been transformed as a result of the pandemic, and employees are holding employers more accountable for things that they may not have done in the past. What began as a global health crisis gave way to an economic crisis, magnifying and uncovering the racial and social inequities that have been deep-rooted in our society. In the spirit of connection and coming together, employers must cultivate diverse skill sets, backgrounds, and values to strengthen and embrace this new normal. From increasing employer support of mental and physical health to flexible, balanced work life, while maintaining community culture. Now is the time for collaboration and partnership on all fronts for the strength of rebuilding and unification, not just for organizations, but for the society overall. How should we think big and different in 2021 to attract diverse and inclusive businesses? Thinking big and different in 2021 in a post-pandemic world, primarily as it relates to attracting diverse and inclusive businesses, involves more empathy and expanding our respective networks to broaden our experiences and connections with others. Businesses have made bold statements in and around diversity and inclusion, but it has to go beyond just diversity and inclusion and has to take into consideration equity, where organizations are holding themselves accountable to be more inclusive in place setting and in various interactions. Expand your networks, connect with various affinity groups that focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion as a start. There's no silver bullet or right answer to any of this, but there are strides and things that people can take and steps that people can take and make it all a society that we are all included in and help create a more inclusive opportunity, communities, and businesses. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoy the conference, and be sure to visit the amazing locations afterwards for opportunities to network. And remember, back together, thinking big, thinking different in 2021.
Great, and thank you so much, LaToya, for joining us. If you recognize LaToya, she spent some time in New Haven before going on to Morgan Stanley, working here in the city and trying to grow businesses and grow the city overall. So it was great to have her back with us and sharing her stories, sharing all of the stories that we heard this afternoon. And again, our theme is thinking big, thinking different in 2021. So I want to share with you a few of the takeaways that I had from hearing all of our different speakers today. You know, number one, and I took this from Laura, attract and build, seek new sectors. Identify those sectors that are going to be growing into the future, and then figure out the things that really make them work and make them work here. I think we're doing that right now with our bioscience sector, but it's a great idea to think about what is the next big sector out there that could be important growth for New Haven. We have lots of things that come through all of our universities, including Yale. I heard Mike say market to remote workers. We all are thinking about that. Work has definitely changed over the next several years. We don't know what it's going to look like even in the next few months, but we all know it's different. And so how do we market to those workers that are going to be working from their home, from an apartment? How do we get them to stay here in New Haven, attract them to the New Haven region to do their remote work from here? And then just from LaToya, sense of community. A sense of community is what attracts people to a location and a place. I think that's growing here in New Haven as well. You know, it's been exciting talking to all three of our speakers because as I was getting them ready for this event, I had to tell them we've got a lot of great things going on in New Haven. It's not that we're coming from a place where it's very rough and we need some help with some new ideas. It's just we want ideas to make Greater New Haven a better place. And so I thought it would be worth if I just share a few of those stories of projects that are going on in New Haven. There are so many, almost too many for us to be able to spend all of our time talking about each one. But some of the big ones I just wanted to walk through. 101 College Street, we had that announcement, that groundbreaking just a week ago. That is a 10-story, 500,000 square foot bioscience building. One of the major tenants, Yale University, but really exciting biolabs, which is a incubator program to generate more of those startup bioscience companies and then lead them into graduated space so that they can continue to grow here. We've heard even at this event in past years that lab space was a big issue for our bioscience companies. So late 2022, Carter Winstanley's building 101 College Street, we expect that to be opening. Concat Place on Dixwell, I think we're going to hear Yves talk a little bit more about this. He's a part of that project as well. But if you have not heard about what Concat, Eric Clemens, the entire team there are doing to transform Dixwell, bring it really back to its historic economic life that it had. This represents a bold reimagining of a historic Black community, and there are so many different pieces really making it a community. Concat already is successful in what they do, and they do so many things, especially workforce development, the arts, science, training, bringing people together. This is really going to be a hub, a home, and it's going to transform New Haven. So July 2024 is when we expect the first phase of this huge project to open up. One of our speakers, Jason Price, you'll hear him on the panel, but he is part of Next Haven. Again, another transformative project. This is an arts model, bringing in the arts to New Haven, but also bringing in business as well, and really integrating into the community, not being just this big, huge anchor institution that's sitting there. This is going to be a community project. It's already in the works of being opened. Official opening, I would expect, and we'll wait to hear from Jason probably in the next few months, but you can go in the building right now. It's a gorgeous property, and they've really integrated themselves into the community. But what I love Jason talks about, I'll say most of this later on, but making New Haven a destination and attraction place, and Next Haven is a big piece of that. This morning, I was out at the airport, Tweed New Haven Airport, talking with Sean Scanlon, the executive director, and also with the Avports team. They are in New Haven, and they are excited about this next phase, this next chapter for Tweed New Haven Airport. This is going to be a new terminal. It's going to be an extension of the runway. It's really a checklist of everything we were looking for out of an airport, and it's the airport that our city and region deserves. We have the growth. You've just seen those slides. We have the growth. We have the opportunities that are occurring, and having an airport that will be able to handle more flights, more destinations. That extended runway will get us to more places. But when you talk to Avports, they're excited about that terminal building too. They don't want it to be just another airport terminal. They want it to be a place that really represents New Haven and the region, having food, restaurants, properties inside the terminal that are from the local area. So we're excited to work with them and really get this airport to take off. I'll excuse the pun there. There are so many other projects. I am not going to run down the list because, and they're all various sizes on here. I don't want to leave anyone off, and there may be some that I left off this list. Putting this list together, you can see how many things we have going on in New Haven, Greater New Haven region, and many more that are not on the slide. There is a lot that is happening here, and we're so excited about all of the possibilities and opportunities that continue to present themselves for our region. Now, part of the reason why we're saying think big, think different is because you may have heard there is a lot of stimulus money that is out there from the federal government that's flowing through the state, through the county, even through our city. Much of it will take on different roles, But we really want to think smart about how we use this funding, because we are not alone in having this additional funding. Every community, every state across the country has been plussed up by federal funding. And so everyone's going to be thinking about, how do I use this? How do we transform our region into the future? I talked with Commissioner David Lehman. Now, the official state economic development plan as it relates to the American Rescue Plan, those are the federal stimulus dollars, has not yet been approved. The governor has presented his proposal of what he would like to use the money for, and now the state legislature is considering it, and I expect that they'll approve the final plan within the next month or so, and then we would start to see some of those dollars on the state level distributed. There are additional dollars that are at the state level, the regional level, and you'll hear First Selectmen, mayors, some of them joining us today. They have different proposals that they're putting in place. But I just want people to think about that, because as we talk about these crazy ideas, throw some big ideas out there, there is funding for smart ideas to be able to implement them. Some of the things that the state is thinking about, supporting manufacturing, investing in broadband, branding for Connecticut, targeted small business support, inclusive growth, green tech fund, workforce development, communities challenge that allows communities to grow, and then also an innovation corridor project. Now, that innovation corridor is where 101 College, some of the state funding that's put into that is along the same lines of what DECD is thinking for the future. Again, these have not been approved by the legislature yet as the ways that the money will be spent, but it's nearly $1 billion that will be invested in economic development for our state. And so on those innovation corridor projects, the state is looking to replicate what is happening with 101 College Street, and that can happen anywhere in the state. We could have another project like that in the greater New Haven region. Someone needs to step forward with some big ideas and have the know-with-all behind it, the plan, the expertise. But those are the types of things that could really continue to transform our region, as if we don't already have enough things that we're doing and are going on for the future. Now, before I toss it over to our panel, I do just want to mention our business retention and growth initiative. You heard Janine Rechtenwald with the Regional Water Authority speak about this. It really is with the support of Regional Water Authority that we've been able to do our own economic development efforts. Economic growth is crucial to the chamber. It's crucial to our region. And so we're really happy to be a part of that. And thank you for the support of the Regional Water Authority. So what have we been doing in that? Well, we're visiting companies. Ann Benowitz is our Director of Economic Development. She's seen 158 companies to date. That's in less than 2 years. Our goal each year is to see 75 companies. Resources provided is something that's crucial. Every one of those visits that we do with companies, and these are in-depth interviews, results in resource connections. Hey, can you have someone help me out with workforce development? We reach out to Workforce Alliance. We make that connection. The list of different requests is endless, but we always are trying to do those things that are going to support companies staying here in our region and growing in our region. On the slides, you can see a different variation between the types of companies that we've seen. A lot of manufacturing, a very strong sector still in our region. Barriers to growth, because what we ultimately want to do with these companies is want to help them grow and stay here in this region. So transportation, we're going to be talking a lot about that. We expect to talk about that at our policy summit at the end of the summer. There's more funding that seems to be coming down the pike for transportation. Cost of living, something that we're always addressing. And in the legislature, we have a special session going on today and tomorrow, but we're hoping that the line is held on the cost for doing business. Workforce development. This is a focus area for the chamber. We've talked about talent pipeline management, other programs with the Governor's Workforce Council that we are bringing forward, because every business we go to, even with the sizable unemployment that we have right now, there is a workforce shortage. There are jobs that are open. There are skills that they're trying to fill. And so that's only going to continue as this recovery picks up. And then venture funding, that especially applies to many of our tech companies. Now, the companies that we talked about, they're really positive about this region. 57% of those 158 saying that they're looking to expand here in the greater New Haven region, or that they would consider expanding in our region. We need to sell it to them so we get that job growth. And even through the pandemic, where we lost a lot of jobs, those companies that we spoke to, we saw a net of 77 new jobs. So that's jobs lost, more jobs added and gained. And at the end of the day, we ended up with more jobs. And I expect many of those jobs that we saw lost will be filled, if they haven't already, in the coming months. Last slide I want to leave you here with, and this is really, we accelerated to this point a lot faster than we thought. And again, thanks to the Regional Water Authority that we could get to this point. But economic development projects, when we go out and we talk with businesses, we come across businesses that have not reached out to anyone else to say, hey, we actually are looking for space right now. So we've had 12 of those opportunities where we have found companies that were considering either moving to somewhere else or just adding to their location here in the greater New Haven region. We've been able to work with them. We've shown them real estate, brought them around to different communities. We always try to keep those companies where they are. We don't want to move them out of the towns they're in, but we do want to keep them in the region, keep them in the state. We've had 3 of those projects come through. That's 137 jobs that are either retained or new, a $4 million capital investment. And we still have 5 of those projects that are active that create opportunities for us to bring in new businesses, new jobs, keep the businesses that we have here and help them expand. So I've talked a lot, but you can tell I'm excited about what we have going on in our region right now and going into the future. This is an exciting event today, and we hope you continue to think big, think different, post it in the Q&A, and we're going to get to the panel right now. So it is my pleasure to now introduce Bruce Johnson from Capstan Tax. Capstan Tax is our panel sponsor, and Bruce will get us underway.
Hello, I'm Bruce Johnson, and I'm a founding partner here at Capstan Tax Strategies. We work closely with real estate professionals and their CPAs to maximize tax savings, and we're proud of our long-term association with the great folks at Markham. After the challenging past 15 months, I'm certain that all of us look forward to getting back to business as usual.
But the real estate landscape has changed, and leveraging those changes requires a unique approach. That's where we come in. At Capstan, we're on the pulse of industry trends, and we know how to make current legislation work for you. Cost segregation is more popular than ever, and we'll make it easier and more profitable than you can imagine. We'll tailor a customized plan based on your needs, and our engineers will carry out the studies with surgical precision. Working with Capstan will take you from this to this. You will feel confident that even in uncertain times, you're making the most of your fixed assets.
When it comes to real estate tax savings, you can count on the Capstan team. I will now introduce the next part of our program, a panel discussion that will highlight some of the latest projects in the greater New Haven region. We have 4 panelists who will be moderated by Mr. Bruce Dittman, the Chief Marketing Officer at Markham LLP. Bruce is a New Haven resident and a graduate of Georgetown University. He came to the profession of accounting and marketing by way of the entertainment and advertising industries. Let's give Bruce a loud round of applause.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it. I particularly appreciate being called Mr. Bruce Dittman. That very rarely happens and makes me a little uncomfortable. I'm super excited to be here again. Apparently, Garrett, the way that we stay on schedule is to have an amazing after program at breweries following us. So we're a little bit ahead, and that's not a problem. That's great. What are we here to talk about today? Today, we want to talk about thinking big and thinking differently about the future of our city, of our communities, of our region. And we have a tremendous panel assembled to answer questions that I'm going to lead the discussion through. And also, at the end, we've got time for some questions from you all. So don't forget to write in your questions in the Q&A section. We'll do our best to get them at the end. So in the spirit of hearing from the people with the information as opposed to an empty suit marketer like me, let's jump in. I'm going to do some quick introductions, and we'll get into the meat of it. So first off, Doug Housladen, our Director of Transportation for the City of New Haven. Doug currently serves in 2 roles in the public sector as the Director of Transportation for the city and as Executive Director for the New Haven Parking Authority, which manages New Haven's Union Station, the Great Union Station, and over 10,000 off-street parking spaces and dozens of facilities in the city. He's a degree from Yale in molecular biophysics and biochemistry and comes to the public sector with professional experiences in real estate, statewide issue advocacy, entrepreneurship, food systems, local government, and public health. So say hi, Doug.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks so much for having us. It's great to be here today.
Glad you're here. Next up, Eve Joseph. Eve is a founding principal of RJ Development and Advisors LLC. In his capacity as principal, Eve was responsible for leading all aspects of the evaluation, procurement, financing, and execution of real estate development projects. So perfect for this conversation. Within the broad spectrum of real estate development projects that RJDA pursues, Eve focuses on leading the growth and expansion of their urban mixed-use development practice, which focuses on developing residential, multifamily, hospitality, and mixed-use development projects in urban environments throughout the northeastern United States. Say hi, Eve.
Greetings. Thanks, Bruce, for having me. It's good to be with you.
I'm so glad you're here. This time I'm learning as we go. Karen, let's start with you saying hi. So you're on the screen while I read some of your background.
Hello, hi.
And Karen, tell us how to pronounce your last name perfectly, please.
Patrick Quinn, as if it's Patrick Quinn. Patrick Quinn.
Karen Patrick Quinn. I'm very happy. There you are. I'm very happy to have you. So Karen is a principal at Patrick Quinn Architects. As the firm's principal, Karen directs the firm's overall strategies and leads the design efforts of all projects in the office. Strongly believing in the power of excellent design, Karen strives to bring innovation and sustainability to all of the firm's projects. Prior to founding Patrick Quinn Architects, Karen worked with Pelly Clark Pelly, New Haven, on large institutional and mixed-use projects, and with HLW International out of New York on various corporate institutional projects. Thanks, Karen. By the way, folks, there are full versions of our bios, I'm sure, on the site. Just in the spirit of time, I'm giving you the high points. Jason Price, founder and chairman of the board at NextHaven. Would you please say hi? Thanks, Karen.
How are you, Bruce? Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Well, I'm super glad you're here. So Jason Price is a partner in Exaltair. Is that right, Jason? Exaltair?
That's correct. Formerly.
Excellent. Exaltair Capital Partners, a private equity investment firm where he specializes in investments in lower middle market firms and family-owned businesses seeking growth capital to professionalize operations. Prior to this, he served as a senior vice president at Cigna Investment Management and as the head of private equity activity for the Connecticut Retirement Plans and Trust Funds, where he oversaw a $4 billion private equity investment program. Over his professional career, Jason has served on the advisory boards of more than 12 private equity partnerships. He currently serves on the board of directors of All Our Kin, of which I'm an alum, on the board Love All Our Kin, and the Promising Scholars Fund. Jason received his BA in Business Administration from Morehouse College and his MBA from Harvard. So welcome, Jason, Karen, Eve, Doug. Let's get into it. I'm excited. Great. So, what I want to talk to everyone today about is the future, right? And we've all probably been a part of a lot of conversations. It seems now, whereas maybe someone would ask you about the weather when you get on the phone, they ask you, are you in the office? I'm not going to ask everyone for a status update. I'm going to try and stay away from the past as much as I can. But let's set a baseline together about the past 18 months or so. So, and then we'll move on to with this group of visionaries, we'll move on to the future. But let's start with you, Jason. I just spoke to you last. Tell me about the challenges that you faced during the lockdown in general. What were your toughest challenges?
Yeah, so the number one challenge, having been opened and having professional artists in our space, using their studios, was really to deal with their safety, to give them access to their studio in a safe way, and to make sure that they were protected. I mean, that was first and foremost, and we spent some time on that. And then directly after that, since we were midstream in our project, since we were opening up in phases, it was really just an assessment of where we were operationally and also financially. And so we had a conversation with our key stakeholders, some of which were financial, to understand where they were, to ensure that we had the dry powder to continue. We talked to a lot of our prospects who were kind of deep into the due diligence process and supporting us to make sure that they still had the wherewithal to support us long term. So that's number one. And then we started to kind of reorient ourselves, just like a lot of other businesses. And given that we were in the visual arts, we ended up using Zoom as, the method to communicate with the rest of the world, whether it be on behalf of our artists or whether it be on behalf of fundraising and development for our project. And quite honestly, we found that to be somewhat cathartic in that, sort of the velocity of the kind of conversations we were able to have actually increased. As we know, everyone was at home. Everyone was afraid, at least in the beginning, afraid to leave their homes. And as long as we were able to tell our story, and we could get the folks that we care about to listen, we were also very successful in actually raising a lot of money in this period. And also connecting our artists, which is part of our mission, to key stakeholders in the broader arts market.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question about that, actually. So you talked about raising money. So philanthropy plays a large role in the financing of this operation. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
What do you do during this time? Because I know that companies around, for institutional philanthropy, they were locking up their checkbooks. And, how did you handle it?
No, I think your natural inclination to get worried, that folks would be less philanthropic in these moments is right. But truly, individuals were more than happy to think about how they support their community during these times. As I said before, I think really the conversations just accelerated. And I don't know if that's a matter of a lot of things were happening at once. We had the pandemic. And we also had the Black Lives Matter movement kickoff. We happen to be situated in a low-income neighborhood, and we really kind of prioritize the wellness of Black and brown people in our community. And people who had the means to help wanted to help, and they wrote checks. So we started where you naturally started, but ended up in a very, very good place.
Oh, that's great to hear. So we'll be following up with the group about some things that we've learned and are employing going forward after the pandemic. But thanks very much. Let me ask Karen. Hi, Karen. Tell us about the challenges that you faced during lockdown, and specifically, what kind of conversations did you end up having to have with clients and your partners that were different, that were meaningfully different or novel in any way?
Either slowed down, halted temporarily, or just stopped permanently. The next was that construction schedules were going haywire because of smaller crews, smaller number of trades on a site at any one time, then either lack of certain materials or long lead times for materials that were normally available daily. Regulatory slowdowns and delays. So, when we have to get a building permit or any time of planning and zoning approval, those kind of things. So cities and town halls mostly. Within our office, sort of lack of spontaneous collaboration as we're all kind of hunkering down and working individually. And, like everyone else, a need for better virtual collaboration tools. And those skills had to be ramped up extremely quickly. And, necessities of mother invention. We all did. So interestingly, the conversations that we had to have were just sort of helping our clients understand how things are different, how it's affecting their particular project. When something is under construction, there's all bets were off. There are so many different ways that things were affected: pricing, timing, 2-week delays constantly if a whole place had to shut down. So those kind of conversations are difficult. We also found in general that people during this time have been less likely to want a large commitment from the beginning. So we had to pivot to doing a lot of feasibility studies for people, where we're really looking at, okay, what could you do when you're ready to do it, because you're not ready for it right now, but let's spend some good time doing that. And to do that, working very, very closely with estimators or general contractors to get a pulse on what is the pricing right now, if you were to do this right now, knowing that things may change very quickly. So that's some of the examples of some of the different conversations that we were having that we didn't normally get into as much previously.
I'm going to ask this question in a minute, but I can't wait. Are there any adaptations that people made to be temporary for coronavirus that have been incorporated into the language of design now permanently?
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of design collaboration tools that are virtual are much actually a lot easier to see when everyone is around a common screen as opposed to at a table. It's really hard for 20 people or 30 people sometimes to look at one drawing and understand it. Well, when it's on a screen, everyone can understand it, and everyone has an opportunity to click around or ask questions. So a lot of companies we're finding are going, virtual unless. So if it's a relationship that needs to be built, that's really key. Let's meet in person. But otherwise, there's some really interesting things that we've learned. One of them being this collaboration. And so those tools really allow then these people, which also can be in various parts of the state, very quickly to get together to work on a common project. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to imagine that we'll never touch as many doors ever again as we did in the past. I imagine there's going to be all kinds of hands-free doors. So thanks, Karen. We'll come back. Hey, Doug, I can't imagine with all of the moving parts as described in your bio what it was like, but give us a sense. Talk about the challenges that you faced in the past year and a half.
Well, thank you. And I just want to start by with deep appreciation, thanking the team at Park New Haven and the City of New Haven for continuing essential services through a global pandemic. Obviously, we've all lived through it. At the Parking Authority, we manage our train station in town. Through a new partnership, we'll be managing both train stations in town coming up. We'll go into that later on in the conversation, but also managing a hospital's parking structure at Air Rights Garage, directly across from Ground Zero. I distinctly remember being the 7th most impacted county in the country. We were finally recognized as a suburb of New York, and not necessarily in a good way. Obviously, managing over 100 essential employees, working with 4 different union contracts, and pivoting on a dime in a government business that has typically been not known for its nimbleness. It's been very heartwarming to see the dynamism and the flexibility coming from folks that work at our parking authority and our transportation, traffic, and parking and the rest of our city. To Karen's point regarding the online collaborations, I think I'm on the tail end of about a 6-year transformation process in our department, trying to go all digital. And we were ready on day one of the pandemic, but it wasn't until about the second month where folks realized how long this was going to be that we were settling in for a much longer scenario. Once it was about April, the shock was wearing off, and it was really exciting to see how our staff evolved. And we were able to collaborate, as Garrett mentioned earlier, with regards to the 101 College Project. And there's a number of development projects, including Union Station Partnership and 101, that's coming out and just breaking ground today. So it's been very challenging, but also very rewarding to see a lot of hard work and a lot of flexibility in our partnerships trying to move these agendas forward over this pandemic.
Thanks, Doug. I can't imagine, just to focus on one part of this puzzle, this beautiful old train station that we have, which is like, the original commuter line, but nobody on it. I would love to hear in the next section, I assume nobody on it, that the next section I want to talk about the future, but, what was that like? What was it like to have a train station without trains running?
It was, so to speak, yes. So our commuter rail saw a 90% drop in customers. And if you have a product that 90% of your customers turn off overnight, you are struggling to handle all of the expenses and all of the underlying capital costs that go with our railroads. Our bus service did not lose as many customers, but also saw initially about an 80% drop, and bus came back faster. And it was very interesting to manage a train station that used to see 4 million people a year, and working with small businesses that have businesses, a few, Sbarro, Subway, Dunkin' Donuts, and Union News, but also with rail providers. And again, most importantly, the staff at Park New Haven, everyone was just kind of trying to get through. And it was very impressive, the efforts that were put forth by our station team, but also the Connecticut Rail team the DOT, Metro North, and essential staff. I will say that, as mentioned by Jason regarding what 2020 happened, and we saw a cultural, social awakening in our country, and maybe more so than we've ever seen. And one thing of interest was that the typical commuter in Connecticut is thought of as a Fairfield County white male heading to work. But during a pandemic, it was Black and brown essential employees on the train still. And you're hearing Connecticut DOT respond, and we'll put it to the future, thinking more about equity amongst our funding sources for our transit provisions. And we need to be doing more linking thinking more about how to link our bus and our rail systems in order to have a mobility system that can really get essential work around the state.
Thanks, Doug. That was great. Eve, before we start talking about the future and changes we've made, how did you do, man? How was it? Past year and a half. What challenges did you face?
Yeah, I mean, the last year and a half was actually, extremely successful for us in the firm. Despite 2020, and it's actually a point of emphasis and a point of pride for us. Having come through it, having advanced areas of projects, West Pipeline, et cetera. But when we think of 2020 and the challenges and the headwinds, the theme for us is absolute and total uncertainty. And for a real estate developer, that is terrifying, right? I mean, we're making decisions, investment decisions that contemplate, tens of millions of ours and others dollars on projections of the future, on a vision of tomorrow that needs to be right. And in 2020, it was not possible really to create a vision of tomorrow because you couldn't put any stakes in the ground to anchor a worldview, to anchor a perspective. So we had projects of various stages of the pipeline. We were selling assets. We were doing site assembly for projects. We were permitting deals, and we were designing projects throughout the region. And as we kind of sat down and tried to forecast what would be kind of a base case business plan for a transaction, what could an outcome kind of reasonably be predicted to be, it occurred to us that we didn't know what we didn't know, right? From a health and safety standpoint, how quickly would, people at large begin to recover from the pandemic? How quickly would we return to normalcy? If you're leasing up a real estate asset, are people going to be transacting and signing deals to enter into buildings? Are people going to use office space, work from home, et cetera? What's happening on construction sites? Are we going to be permitted to build? Right? That was a conversation that was being had in the second quarter of last year. Who would be permitted to literally build? And then obviously convincing capital partners to do deals, right? So I'm trying to convince a capital partner that my view of the world is accurate, and they're poking holes in all the assumptions, saying, how are you certain that in 12, 18, 24 months, when your project is delivering, that the world will be in such a state that the business plan can be viably executed? And so we didn't know what we didn't know. And we had to, muster kind of courage and conviction, honestly, to kind of just keep moving forward. And we were able to do that.
Well, I mean, no small feat. I do have a kind of a silly thought that I just dying to ask you. So, it takes years and years, right, to build, to take something from an idea to an inhabitable building and whatever, or a leasable space. When the whole world freezes up for a year, I kind of feel like that amplifies it. Did you have conversations? Were there conversations about, this was supposed to take 2 years, it's now going to take 3 years, it's 50% more. Do we need to revisit? And how do you not build a 2019 building in 2022 is essentially my question. You don't want to have the wrong iPhone docked in there. Did you have any experiences with anomalies like that or anachronisms like that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of not building the 2019 building in 2020, we had lots of conversations about what do we think the long-term permanent impacts of coronavirus, what will those look like on the built environment? And there are competing theories. I mean, some people think that the built environment, or some people thought that the built environment would be fundamentally transformed in ways that won't even reflect our history. I think that perspective is kind of losing, although there certainly will be enduring changes. But ultimately, the best synopsis that I've kind of been exposed to is that, humanity has had hundreds, if not thousands of years to kind of perfect living indoors. We've survived, pandemics in the past. And while it's not to say that our situation currently and our design and architecture currently is perfect and cannot be improved upon, it's pretty darn good. And so if you can be thoughtful about space, if you can be thoughtful about placemaking, if you can be thoughtful about design, incorporate forward-thinking aspects to mitigate the known risks. But we're not starting from scratch, right? It's not a blank sheet of paper to figure out how humans are going to cohabitate, coexist inside of a built environment. So we definitely challenged ourselves and our architects to think through what can and should we be doing to deliver, healthy buildings that are 21st century, et cetera, et cetera. But we've had practice at this, right? And there are more knowns than unknowns, I think, in that respect.
Right. Fair enough. I was hoping, just no built-in CD racks and things like that. But thank you. So, all right. So I'll put this up to the group, and whoever wants to answer it can, and you don't have to if you don't want to. But with the exception of Zoom and other technologies, what changes in professional behavior or practices that you implemented to accommodate the crisis that was going on have become best practices going forward in your business?
I can take a first stab if you like. One is that things that we've been trying to incorporate in a lot of our designs anyway have now become household terms, like MERV filters and HERS ratings and all these things that people now know about. So our goal is to really take this time when there is a momentum to really push for healthy buildings and healthy communities. So, what is a healthy community? It's walkability, access to sunlight and nature, proximity to essential services, all those kind of things. And then with a healthy building, one that's resilient, that's easy to maintain. For us now, we're really going to be pushing net zero energy or net zero ready. Getting back to basics, orienting buildings well so they have a lot of natural light. So you're not creating temperature swings. These are the things that people actually are understanding now that we've been always trying to incorporate. A building that has high efficiency mechanical systems, advanced filtration, fresh air, all that stuff. Now we're getting traction. And now especially buildings that are flexible. So flexible spaces that can allow for change over time and or in these unusual circumstances.
That's great. That's exciting. And, I remember when this started and everyone was moving out of New York City and they're saying, well, they're moving to Connecticut, but also, I'm moving to Brooklyn. There's more sky and more trees and more air. And as you build buildings and we all make places and spaces and build city, we don't want to be a place where people have to move out of. So that's exciting to hear. Would anyone else, what else you got, team? What did you learn to do other than the telecommuting and work from home stuff during the pandemic that has now become best practice for your business?
I think from the perspective of managing two large workforces or 100-person workforces, I think the most important aspect as a manager was trying to become a lot more human and more responsive to critical needs of the other person on the other side. So I know you just said you don't want to hear work from home but flexible work schedules, they were literally not allowed in prior iterations of our union agreements. And I think we're going to see a lot more conversations that are real that should have happened a decade ago, 2 decades ago. And I think I'm speaking it more not from the technology side, but from the human side. I think we're seeing a lot more benefit from folks who can be a little bit more flexible. Now, it's really challenging. I think what we're also struggling with in our organization is potential for disparate impact on folks that are in person versus remote. So our white collar employees are able to work remote much more than our blue collar employees, but at the same time, we're able to accommodate with hazard pay and other factors. So I think from our perspective, just the human element of what we all went through collectively, there was a lot more sharing in my experience as a manager, and I'm trying to bring that human touch a lot more to our future.
Thanks, Doug. I'm going to move forward. I'm excited to hear from everyone else as well. So let's play this game. This was, I think, Barry Nailbuff's Midas game, but let's imagine that we've unlimited resources. And this is particularly exciting because usually when we do this, we don't have any more resources. We often have less. This year, we're going to have more. So let's imagine we have a blank check, okay? Let's have a conversation about what we would all do to improve each of our particular, the outcomes of our goals and mission individually, but also as a city. And I'd like to start that discussion by asking each of you, what does it mean to think big when it comes to our city and our region? And what does it mean to think big in your particular area of expertise? Why don't we go to Jason? What does thinking big mean to you?
It's sort of a loaded question. Be careful what you ask for. You know, I think for us, and I always say us because I know it says that I'm the founder of Next Haven, but I'm a co-founder. And so I have a partner, Titus, and, you know, it's a small, close-knit group, and we do think big. I think what it means for us is the ability to accelerate our thinking and move much quicker than we've been able to move, even though in some ways we've achieved a lot in a short period of time. And, you know, this is not the exact question you asked, but, you know, when you have unlimited resources, I think that means there's enough to go around for multiple stakeholders in a particular region, right? And so what I hope can happen is that, you know, we can all sit down and begin to collaborate. So we always say this about our project is that we're not in competition with anybody. We're looking to collaborate with our neighbors and also the developers in the area. But that comes from, the ability to collaborate comes from a common point of view. And when you have a lot of dry powder to pursue opportunity, to me, it creates the opportunity to sit down, agree on what the issues and problems are, and then sort of divide and conquer. I'm hopeful that as money comes into this region, that we can begin to collaborate in those ways. We already are. I know Doug and I know Eves very well. But I think unlimited funds just accelerates that sort of cooperation.
So I'm going to ask you maybe a little more even pointed conversation. You can speak specifically in the arts or in development or however you want to contextualize it. If you had this Midas touch, right? And for everyone on the phone, we know we don't have unlimited funds, but we're going to play this game. We're going to pretend we do, and we'll try and get as close to that as possible with the reality. But if you did, what would you change? Either in the arts community or, well, let's talk about the arts community.
In the arts community, I wouldn't change much about the arts community. I mean, to be honest, I would sprinkle it around. I mean, I think what I would really change is this idea, and Eves touched on this. He wasn't direct, but he touched on it. This idea that, you know, innovators and developers should have an opportunity to take risk, because it's that sort of innovation that really pushes the envelope and brings the type of growth and development that we need in this area, and the thinking that allows you to begin to think outside the box. So what I know about Eve's project is it's ambitious. Our project in Next Haven is ambitious. We were fortunate in that in beginning to have those conversations, we said, look, this is risky, but we were convincing enough to allow people or stakeholders and investors to invest in us and know that we could navigate the different risk buckets that one who takes an intelligent approach to development would need to navigate, knowing that there could be some failure on the horizon, right? So what I know about investing in general is that is the principle of America, which is, you know, we try, sometimes we fail, we lose, but that's what drives the innovative spirit within America, and no one should have to apologize for doing that as long as the project is well thought out. and you have the supporters and the resources in place to do it. So that's not a direct answer to your question, but it really is about this opportunity to begin to think about risk differently, and not apologize for taking those risks.
And since, we could be talking about Next Haven, we could be talking about Concat. If you don't mind, I'd love to hear you talk about risk and you talk about the community. Eve, maybe you could tell us, how do you, an individual and their company has a risk tolerance and a management strategy. But what do you do when that exceeds that of the community in which you're trying to make change? Eve, you want to take a stab at it? I mean, Karen, if you've got something to say about it, you popped up on the screen. I'd love to hear it as well. First come, first serve. How do you manage?
Oh, go ahead, Karen. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the question. You're asking how, when the risk exceeds a community's tolerance, you just frame that so I know what I'm dealing with?
Sure, yeah. So everyone on this call is a creative thinker, right? And our companies and our professionals, we look to you all and people like you for a vision of the future. And you have a sense of acceptable risk when it comes to changing the world in which you live in. What can I actually change? What can I accomplish? How do you manage the process here in New Haven when your taste for that kind of quote unquote danger exceeds the community's taste in which you were going to put it? So, how do you bring your vision to the people?
Yeah, it's okay. So this kind of goes into triple or double bottom line where, the community returns are not necessarily factored in by private capital. And so the short answer, unfortunately, it's like a bad word almost, a word I don't really love. But it comes down to subsidy, right? It comes down to partnership, right? Which is maybe a more palatable way to think of subsidy, whereby, some other entity is willing to make a contribution to the capital structure of an investment to basically pay for some of the benefits, the social or other benefits that are being kind of generated or extracted from a transaction, to encourage private capital to do a deal. Private capital is private capital, and private capital is fungible. And quite frankly, one of the things that is like a soapbox for me in the state, of which I've done a ton of transactions of Connecticut, Connecticut is tough to do business in, just generally, right? We have a high construction cost, we have high labor costs, we have very significant regulatory infrastructure, and it's a relatively high tax environment. And so we are, as a state, as a region, as a city, we are competing for capital dollars with other states in the country, which are easier for people to generate the same return. And you could take it a step further. We're actually competing internationally for those capital dollars. And so, it's been a job, quite frankly, convincing the capital markets that New Haven is a viable bet. And we've been able to do that over the last decade, as evidenced by the thousands of units that are being constructed since, I started here in 2006. But before 2006, nothing was happening. So, we have a tremendous amount of momentum, and we certainly want to continue to do transactions, to build out our community, and we want to be more demanding about the societal return that our investments are generating. What is the public return to the investments that we are making in our community? But you have to be careful, because there's an inflection point where if the community demands, or if the state, or if the cities or whomever demand societal return, which I think is correct, but do not support investment by helping to make that societal return, we run a risk of making ourselves, less competitive with other cities and other states who are competing for the same dollars. And so that's when I think of other entities that can be part of capital structures to make projects happen. And many of those entities are beginning to materialize and step up, quite frankly, in big ways, right? So philanthropy is one. Jason can speak in depth of the societal benefit that philanthropy enables, while also enabling private capital to generate private capital return. I think the state and the municipalities are doing some tremendous things, and I don't want to spend too much time, but one thing I'm very excited about is just last week, the Connecticut House passed a $2.5 billion commitment to invest in poor communities, right? To advance infrastructure, to advance housing, to advance technology-related endeavors in Connecticut's poor communities. And so those state dollars will help to hopefully leverage private capital, provide private capital that return it demands, but generate a societal benefit. So, that's kind of long-winded, and I can spend more time there if you'd like, but I think that you have to supplement private capital with other entities that are willing to help make way for the public benefits that we're looking for.
Great, thank you.
I think given that news that you shared with us, Eve, that sort of gets to your Midas touch a little bit. There's a little bit of Midas touch coming around. I think one of the biggest benefits that we can do as a community is to give ourselves a little time to think about what are some inventive ways that we can create our community and create flexible sort of multi-use spaces. So sort of big picture, where does that need to go? There's apps for things like Walk Score. What is a healthy community? What communities don't have the things that give you a good Walk Score? So those are, amenities. Those are cultural places. Those are things that are available to an individual within a certain walking radius, right? So we can look at the city that way. Look at where we need to look at things. On the other hand, then, who are the businesses who want to come in, and how do we create these really interesting kind of mixes of uses, given that there is so much less need, probably for the foreseeable future, on actual space to host those things. So create a space, create a something that can foster incubator space at the same time as a WeWork type thing. But is it also your senior home for a little while, or your senior center for a while? I'm just giving random things, but can we spend some time? And I think that's where the luxury is. If we know there are certain funds, spend some time to figure out and do some of these risky mixes in paper or in concept before we really commit to what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I want to put you on the spot in a second, actually, Karen, but I would have to say if I were to play this game, look, the people are not going to work in offices or commute the same perhaps ever again. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't think so. And sometimes I feel like we get it backwards. We want to attract businesses to improve our city, which obviously is super important, but no one wants to live here and nobody can fly here or whatever. I think we have a moment, a pretty specific, if not unique moment in time to create an eminently livable city and to rise, to elevate our neighborhoods and the all of the amazing things about living in New Haven. I just feel like I just see it a little bit in the other direction. I feel like if you build it, they will come. I would invest, again, if it was unlimited, I would invest in making this, focusing on this place as a place to live. And I feel confident that businesses would follow that. Certainly, quality of life has driven a lot of businesses out to ski slopes and beaches and other things. But all right, I'm putting you on the spot, Karen. Reverse Midas, what would you change? Pick one thing.
What's the question? What would
you change about our city or our region or something you have to deal with in your process?
What would I change? I just want to move forward to create an equity in this sort of mixed neighborhoods, mixed meaning, meaningful neighborhoods, walking, eating, entertaining, working.
I will 100%. We will accept inequity as the thing to change. That's great. Hey, Doug. Thanks, Karen. Doug, what would you change about our city or about our region?
Thanks, Bruce.
And then what would you add?
Yeah, I love the book, Why Not? If anybody is listening, it's a wonderful innovation book. It teaches you 4 methods for innovation, one of which is the Midas touch that Bruce is going through right now. And for my money, much to what Karen mentioned, my money would be on expanding access to outdoor space and active transportation. So what I mean by that is, one thing that became very evident was that Connecticut's pristine coastlines and access to woods and trails, and a lot of that was a big benefit for Connecticut residents, to Bruce's point about enhancing quality of life where we live. I think for my money, I would build a trail system at least as good as Rochester, Minnesota. I think we can be as good as Rochester, Minnesota. And, they have the Mayo Clinic. We have Smilo and the Yale Neuroscience Center, as well as 20 York Street. So I think we'd like to see a lot more opportunities for safe, active transportation, people to walk around their neighborhoods. The other aspect of the Midas touch that I would implement, not only a robust trail network, and of course, to Karen's point about walking around your neighborhood, we have a lot of equity issues where our investments are needed still with sidewalks and basic engineering. But the Midas touch innovation would be an electric bus rapid transit system, an all-electric bus rapid transit system that would fall in line with the Move New Haven study we've been working on for the last 8 years. And that bus electric rapid transit system, I'm calling it the BERT, Bus Electric Rapid Transit. It's in Congresswoman DeLauro's, the Appropriation Chair's list of transportation investments for $20 million. It's a very small investment considering the amount of return on investment that happens when you invest in your bus line. We've seen a great expansion of rail service in 2018 with the Hartford line opening up, but we haven't yet seen our bus systems in Middletown, in Hartford, and in New Haven realign themselves to catch that commuter traffic. We still think internally in New Haven about Union Station as the big train station, and it's very important. All Metro North trains go there. The Amtrak Regional goes there. But even more so, the commuter rail line at the State Street train station is even more important now. We have Shoreline East going from New London to Stamford, and the Hartford line going from New Haven to Springfield. We are still going to be leading in the future with train service as commuter rail service, but our future in the Midas touch is going to be an all-electric bus electric rapid transit that is a 3-seat stop from Westville to the State Street train station that will expand employment opportunities for everyone in New Haven. New Haveners, 20% of New Haveners walk and bike to work. We'd like to increase that. If we invest in our trail network and our bike lane network, you can access this bus electric rapid transit and get to a train station to access, the jobs that are in the Hartford region, the Stamford region, and the Electric Boat region of New London.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I imagine that with a combination of work from home, or what I've been hearing a bunch of, which is I'm going to work from home, but I have to go in 2 days a week or whatever. A efficient electric bus system and/or a reliable train system, which we do have. I imagine we're going to start seeing fewer cars. If you're a young person and you have to go into the city twice a week, but you can work remotely in New Haven, and leafy, beautiful New Haven, arts-filled New Haven, why have a car? Especially when you can Uber or Zip or whatever. I'm sure that makes you happy. Not good for parking meters revenue, but good for bike lanes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to have a mobility suite, an option of mobility. And a personal vehicle has a function in that suite of options. But shared vehicles, shared bicycles, shared automobiles, Lyfts and Ubers, all of these play into a sandbox that really leads to mobility. But the key in that sandbox is to have the rails. So these rails are literal rails, but they're also major bus lines. And the bus electric rapid transit system that we're envisioning to bring to New Haven is a lot like what Hartford saw with the invention of Fast Track. Having bus lanes, having a bus priority means that Westville to the train station at State Street is a 5 to 10 minute ride. That is a game changer for everyone who can walk to Westville Center, which it turns out is about 20,000 people.
Wow, I didn't realize that. That's amazing. Thanks, Doug. So we have about 10 minutes left, give or take. I want to pivot a little bit. So as as we were planning this event and we were having conversations with leaders and thought leaders like the panels and many of you, the panelists and many of you who are out in the audience, I hear the terms placemaking and space making quite a bit. So I'm going to defer to the expertise of the group and ask you in a second to talk to me about that. And, to me, you're talking about the gram, right? You're talking about, like, I know that years ago we put on a conference for retailers, and they were talking about malls, and you can't build a mall without building a Instagrammable spot or a restaurant, or they're painting wings on the sides of buildings. But for certain, the people on this panel are doing this in a large scale. But maybe I'll ask Karen, if you're comfortable, these feel like terms of art in your business. If you could tell us about them, in brief, and I want to talk to the rest of the folks as well.
Sorry, the very last part got cut out for me. What was the question?
I was saying that I want us to have a conversation about placemaking and or space making, and I feel like those are terms of art of your profession. So I thought maybe you could give us a working definition.
Yes. Okay. So there are the concepts of a lifestyle retail, right? So things are transforming where instead of you're selling things, you're selling an experience, right? So there's that side of things when you're looking at design, creating a place where people want to be and be seen. I think for us, no matter what the function of a building is, we want to create what we're calling the healthy building, with the idea that healthy minds, healthy bodies, healthy buildings are all intertwined. And there are apps for these things, right? There's certifications. There are certifications, in this last year specifically for getting back to work and what that actually means for a healthy work environment. But in general, these things apply for us in all sorts of buildings. For workers, it's using staircases instead of elevators. It's having bottle filtering stations with filtered water, encouraging healthy foods at the workplace, in the hotel lobby. People want to go to places that are going to be seen as healthy. Creating equitable spaces that are accessible to those with disabilities. Encouraging cycling to work or other methods of public transport. Really importantly these days, bringing in daylight views to occupants so that you're encouraging a connection with nature. And these are all things for us that are incorporated in sort of various certifications. So typically for us, building certifications have always been sort of energy driven. So LEED is a really, really well-known one. But there's more and more research on sort of occupant health. And so for us, that's where the magic is. It's combining a really healthy building that works really well, that has a low carbon footprint, very highly energy efficient, but encourages and sort of the onus is on the owner going forward to create a space that is operating as a really healthy place.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also, that sort of inside of the building or on the property. Let's talk about CONCAT, which, how do you anchor a street, neighborhood, community, doesn't matter, with a concept? How do you create a destination? And this could go for anyone, because certainly I think that the Union Station has incredible potential as a destination, not just as a conduit, and certainly Next Haven as well. So who wants to talk about how they made a space?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at this one. But before I do that, Bruce, I want my shot at Midas touch, man. You didn't ask me what I want, what my wish is. And so my wish is that we get North Atlantic Rail, right? High-speed rail from New York to Boston, 100 minutes, game change, right? You want to talk about leveraging what COVID has done to the state of Connecticut in terms of lots of negatives, but also the positives, spin-off benefit of 27, I think Michael Weinstock mentioned 27,000 new New York address changes to Connecticut, paying a lot for houses, living here, to your point, Bruce. North Atlantic Rail, high-speed train from Boston, New York, 100 minutes, I think would be, I'd buy that tomorrow, snap my fingers. In terms of placemaking, or creating a destination, it's about people, right? You got to have a place that is interesting, that has energy, that has a there, and there is created by folks, by people. And so, I think you're always thinking about what does the market need? What are the uses that will kind of create inertia, act as that center of gravity to create intrigue, to create activity, vibrancy, and energy. And so, when we're thinking about placemaking, we're thinking about creating a destination. It's all about how do we drive as much foot traffic to a location 24/7, right? As many hours of as many days of as many weeks of a year as possible. And so, it applies to all projects, but it's really about, delivering that, filling that void, and creating something exciting that people are going to be attracted to and gravitate towards.
Yeah, that's it, man. I think, and also I have to say that, because this is how I approach the world, I think it's also important as you build a space that you educate or equip people with a language to use to talk about that space. Because I think, I'm sure I say this every year and I never remember. I think for me, I'll do my Midas. Obviously I'm going to be saying this with half a smile because there are really critical, important problems to solve before this. But we need to teach the country, banks, investors, the world, students, parents, and ourselves how, if we want people to talk better about our town, we have to tell them the language we want them to use to describe it. And I think so much doesn't happen because people don't know how to talk about things. That's my thing. It's 3:41. I'm going to wrap up with a final question. If when each of you answers, you want to add in a Midas or a reverse Midas or tell me how you're going to make the train station, Union Station to the Union Station of my dreams, please go ahead. It's okay. But let's play one more game. Okay. It's 5 years from now. Okay. We're no longer in unlimited funds, but we got a couple shekels and we did a couple things here in town. Okay. It's 5 years from now. You're at a conference, the world's greatest people conference, and you're sitting at the bar. Someone asks you where you're from and what it's like there. In 10 seconds, 15 seconds, how do you describe the New Haven of the near future? And Eve, you're still on my screen. Let's go right back to you. What do you tell them? Where are you from 5 years from now? How do you describe us?
5 years from now, growing, vibrant, equal access to opportunities. And we've created a mousetrap that has allowed our rising tide to lift all the boats.
We're at a bar. How do you describe New Haven to me?
Bruce, I'll jump in if you'd like. First of all, I'll introduce my three lovely panelists who are with me at the bar at the World's Greatest People's Conference. Sorry, Bruce, you're not quite invited, but you can be there next time.
No expectation that I would be there.
Thank you. So in 5 years, I'm introducing New Haven as the last suburb of New York, reintroducing ourselves as the last suburb with 1 hour train access to Penn Station, thanks to the East Side Access Project, 1 hour train service, and a brand new Union Station that is the centerpiece of New Haven-based companies as well as Connecticut-based products. And for us in New Haven, we'll have a brand new building to look at 101 College and possibly one next door with a brand new public square at the Temple Square right in front of 101 College. So our walk to downtown will be drastically different. And so in 5 years, I'm hoping that people are taking the train, a 1 hour service from Penn Station to New Haven Union Station, witnessing a brand new renovated Union Station in partnership with the state of Connecticut, City of New Haven, and walking downtown through a ring of parks, Amistad Park, Union Square, and the 101 College Plaza, all the way to downtown New Haven. So that's our 5 year plan for New Haven, is to renovate the train station and to have 1 hour service there from New York.
That sounds amazing. Jason.
So you didn't come to me for the Midas Touch question, so I'm gonna try to incorporate it into my answer. So it's really just to underscore what you said before, and that is, I think New Haven has a communication problem, right? So I don't I constantly hear from people who move here how great New Haven is, but also directly after that, how surprised they are at what it's like to live in this particular community. And I think, a lot of money should be put towards telling our own story and creating our own narrative, and then coming up with metrics to measure it. So we can say this is a place that is the best at whatever, or we've improved, jobs by whatever, or this is becoming the hub for startups and we've launched X number of startups, whatever. And when I think by doing that, you'll then begin to have others seeking New Haven as a place to plant roots rather than a place that you end up and you happily realize it's better than what you thought. So that's number one. And I think that's low hanging fruit. Like, we should just be doing that. And there's firms out there that can help us do it, right? So I think, if anybody has a beeline to Justin, they should call him, and that's what we should be doing next. As for the conversation that you have 5 years from now, I think it's directly along those lines, right? It is this narrative where you say, 5 years ago, we had a conversation about changing New Haven. There's actors that were, central to, helping to develop New Haven as a place of innovation and growth. And we now have one of the most vibrant financial sectors. We have the most vibrant startup community. This is a place for the professional arts as well as the local art scene. And, we're actively investing in our transportation infrastructure. And then we have the metrics that we point to say, we're 5 years out, imagine where we'll be in 20 years, right? So if you can tell that story, then I think we will have been successful, or a portion of that story. And then the last thing I'll say about, buildings as a place for development, because you didn't ask me that question either, but I'm just going to, kind of get into it. But, the building is the vessel that holds the model for innovation and growth, right? So if I take the next statement, for example, our building is really focused on educating the next generation of professional emerging artists, giving them a proprietary education, and then providing the access they need to be professional within New Haven and also to the broader workforce. But within it is the entire arts ecosystem. We have exhibition space, we have theater space, we have co-working space, we have professional studios. And it's through the control of that, to Karen's point, that we are then able to pivot and double down on any one of those segments of our building, which is actually the place, in order to execute on our strategy. So what I encourage is people to figure out the pathways and the models, and then use the real estate as a conduit in which to execute on those ideas. I think that's it in one comment.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to apologize to Titus. I didn't have it in my notes, but I did know that. And I'm so happy to hear you say that you share my Midas wish, or I share in yours, about telling our own story and using our own language. And if anyone wants to make noise, Lord knows I've been making noise about this for a long time. There's an election coming up. There are people on this phone call. Make some noise. Not only do we have Next Haven, and I probably say this every year too, but we have the second largest collection of free public art in the country, second only to our capital. No one says that. We've got 4 world-class theaters. No one says that. Doug, you know this. You taught me this. We're the first planned city in America. No one cares that we're the first Yellow Pages or the inventor of the, of the lollipop or the matchstick or the bicycle or whatever. But we have a tremendous story, and everyone says, "Wow, it's a lot nicer than I thought," and you've got good food. It's time for us to get serious about telling a serious story. Karen, sorry.
Can I just add to Doug's dream about having this great event that's in New Haven, but people from New York, I think people have also come in from Boston. We've taken this magic new service that takes you throughout the city, and then we end up somewhere near the Grand Avenue Bridge, which will have been renovated by that point, on this bar this is a floating bar that, of course, someone has designed in the area. We've got oysters from the Quinnipiac River, where it's clean. We've got restaurants that have provided all the food, Connecticut wines. I think we've got a really, really good story here, and we can bring people in.
What's so great about all of you and many of our audience members, but just to address this panel, is we're people in New Haven caring about New Haven, trying to make change in New Haven. We are invested in our success. We're trying to write our own story and then tell it. And I'm really heartened to hear all of the great thoughts and attitudes serious heavyweight people, folks, on this panel. Like, I have confidence we may not get all of these wishes done, but it sounds like we're ready to die trying, and I bet we'll get some of it. So we're going to transition. Thank you all. Before we go to a big goodbye, I do know we have some questions. And I believe there's a question about Tweed. Doug, you want to field that?
And I think Garrett did a great job of mentioning there's going to be $70 million direct economic impact in the build out of the new terminal projected to be on East Haven's side of the Tweed campus. And then an additional indirect will be invaluable, I think, just to be able to fly to Chicago, Charlotte, or Florida, expands our products and services, and especially our intellectual property and our sales reach. I think the number one challenge for the New Haven region right now, well, forgive me, there's a lot of challenges. One of the challenges for the New Haven region right now is getting sales teams home for dinner to tuck their children into bed at night. And if anyone's trying to do business flight out of Tweed, there's not enough options. So I think the indirect economic impact is going to be additional 1,000, top 1,000 corporations being founded and remaining here, rather than being sucked into the Boston ecosystem, the New York ecosystem, the Austin ecosystem. No offense to our friends from Austin on earlier, or the San Francisco ecosystem. I think creating a place will. Part of that is having Tweed and having this 1-hour train service.
Thanks. And one other question that we have, and then we'll wrap up, is from Chelsea. Forgive me, I don't know who asked the Tweed question, but I know it was asked. I missed that part. Chelsea asks, it's great to talk about building and developing, but, how do you manage these seemingly out of control material costs? Anyone want to field that one in brief?
Yeah, I'll take a shot, Bruce. Material costs kind of go up and they go down. Lumber was at an all-time high at $1,700 a board foot, 2-3 weeks ago, and now it's down below $1,000. So, I don't know that we necessarily need to focus on that aspect of that inflationary component, because it's transient, right? It comes and it goes. But I do think there's a fundamental question about, the cost of doing business, the cost of delivering products. And, so long as people can pay rents and, office tenants can sign leases, we can outpace kind of those rising costs. But as we think about marketing ourselves to be competitive regionally, if we are in a context of, a super region, including New York and Boston, I think we as a state and as a city need to market ourselves and try to think through ways to lower that cost of doing business. I mean, land is not going to go down. Materials are materials, but, what can we do about other aspects of the delivery process to help, again, attract that private investment capital that we're competing with the whole country for?
Thank you. So, Jason, Doug, Karen, Eve, thank you all so very, very much for participating and preparing and for all of the work that you're doing. I think I enjoyed the conversation tremendously. I hope people feel inspired or at least, if not inspired, then unsettled by not knowing exactly what's to come, but that it's up to us to think of it. I believe some or most or all of you will be participating in the networking portion of this. And I would encourage, before I turn it back over to Garrett, find our speakers, talk to them, ask them questions, and then amongst yourselves at this, play this game, grab a beer and say, all right, I've got the Midas touch. What would I do to improve my city? And then see how close to that we can get. So thanks all very much. Garrett, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. And great job by all of our panelists. This has been a wonderful discussion, but doesn't have to end. We're going to put up in just a moment the slides about where you need to go. But I do want to let everyone know that coming up on July 13th, that's our next big in-person event. It's going to be for the healthcare and life sciences. And I'm looking out at the green right now. They're setting up for Arts and Ideas. We're doing a program with the Arts and Ideas Festival on Thursday at 4 o'clock. It's a Zoom event to talk about all of the great programming, again, that's going to be happening right here in New Haven. Before we wrap up, I just want to thank everyone who's been a part of this. Thank you to our panelists, our speakers, to the Chamber staff and the Markham team who did all the behind-the-scenes work, especially using this great platform that we have. All of our sponsors, Markham, Regional Water Authority, M&T Bank, Capstan Tax, Munger Construction, and Newtown Savings Bank, RJ Media Group, and the New Haven Register. And again, go out to these programs, as Bruce just mentioned. I looked at the weather. It looks like we're clear. I'll knock on wood for rain, but we have 3 locations that you can go out to this afternoon. If you haven't registered, these are pay events, but you can go and show up. Bears, we are at our capacity. So please go to Stony Creek or 12% Beer Project. 12% Beer Project is in North Haven, Stony Creek over in Brantford. We hope to see everyone. We're going to continue the conversation about these big ideas and think big and think different about our region. Thanks again, everyone, for being with us.